delicious coffee. That's delicious. Welcome back. Nice to see you.
Spice?
Huh?
Are you still on the pumpkin spice?
You going to talk into the microphone? No.
Am I not talking in?
Oh, now you are. Oh, yeah, you're good. No, I'm off the pumpkin spice now. I'm back to silk vanilla. You can only eat pumpkin spice for so long before you're like
my daughter.
Your bowel starts to tap out.
Everything has
you know
to
what
be
I mean?
Sweet.
Yeah, no, I do. I love the sweet, but I can't have like natural sweetness. Like I can't have sugar cane. I like the flavor. I love a nice coffee with a little bit of creamer in it, and I love pumpkin spice. But pumpkin spice is one of those things where you're like, January 3rd, you're going, all right, let's tap out. And then your stomach starts to feel a little weird after you have one, and you're like, what's happening down there? And then you might have a movement of sorts where you're like, it's the pumpkin spice, because everything starts to smell like pumpkin spice after a long period of time. It's like going on a vacation. When you come home and your movement smells like the ocean or turtles or fish.
I have been. Speaking of that,
yes.
Have you ever been to Jamaica?
Yeah. Ocho Rios.
Okay. Ocho Rios. Awesome. Now, when you went down there, within a day or two, did your poo turn like dark black?
No. You have internal bleeding. Maybe you should go get that checked.
No. I've talked to people about this and they said it's totally normal.
No.
But yeah.
Never heard of it.
It's fascinating how black my poo went when I went to Jamaica. Every time. I've been like 5 times. Every time.
Really? I didn't know that.
Black as night. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check it out. I'm one of those vacation
Google
guys
it.
too, where it's like you get like it's my only concern when I get on vacation. It's like the compression on the plane messes with things.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? And you're like,
travel
I just need to
roids.
get that on
I
schedule.
also get travel roids every time. Like if I don't get roids, but if
you travel, you do.
I've got a kit that I take with me, like a bathroom bag or whatever.
Prep
right?
H.
The wife bought me this, and there's Prep H in that bag because when we travel, sure as shooting Texas Junior, the ring gets a little puffy.
Anyway, we're going to talk about puffy rings a little bit later on. James D. Fiore is going to join us. Joe Rogan stepped in it again with his idiot buddy Brett Weinstein the other day. We're going to laugh about that. We'll talk a little bit about Sam Harris, who took it in the mouth from the religious right over the weekend. And if you're unfamiliar with Sam Harris, we'll fill you in on who it is. It's actually it's interesting because all of these things lead back into the same thing with just bullshit artists running around curating bullshit art. Anyway, we'll have a laugh about that a little later on. We'll talk about husbands and wives and marriages and relationships and why you don't need one. But it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you somebody who's done something that has never been done in this country before. Never in the history of the country. Not only did he do it, he marshaled the teams to do it, had to work with hundreds of companies to do it, just started to do it prior to the pandemic. And dude, he's at the Las Vegas Consumer Electronics Show. And he unveiled it. Do you know how many people have done what this man has done? The answer is 0. And he's a Canadian, and his name is Flavio Volpe, and he's the president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturing Association, which has just created Canada's very first zero emissions, Canadian-built, Canadian-sourced, Canadian-engineered electric vehicle called Project Arrow. And it is sexy AF. Please welcome to the program the man who did it all, Mr. Flavio Volpe, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, all right.
How do you like that? That's our intro.
You're a hell of a hype man. I did it some. There's probably a few hundred people who did it, but I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you were the guy. Like you headed it up, right? You were the guy. Dude, great to meet you. Great to have you. Yeah, go ahead and say what you want to say.
I want to get this out of the way, Flavio. How do you say your last name?
Volpe,
because your name, like when he said it, I expected like us to shoot to a shot of a guy on a horse on a cliff, long flowing hair, like the sun shining. You've got some kind of a sword in your hand.
Yeah.
Phil Collins is playing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Do you know in Latin, my name means golden fox. So, maybe there's something in there.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah.
Not that I'm disappointed by what we've got here, Flavio.
No.
It sounds like you are. It sounds like you are.
Yeah. I'm actually shirtless, to be honest. is what I was hoping for.
There's a few, and you should have had me on about 20 years ago if you wanted longer hair. I mean, I can't do anything about where it's going. I keep growing my beard so that it follows my face up.
Dude, I don't care what you look like. I'm just glad you're here. I've been following your progress for quite some time. Obviously, I followed you a while ago. It's funny, Twitter, for all its warts and how terrible it is, it brings a lot of really good people together. And I started following you about 2 years ago, right? And it was because you were leaking out these little pieces of information. And I knew you were working on this incredible vehicle, which you just launched at CES, called Project Arrow. It's Canada's very first, only manufactured, sourced, engineered electric vehicle. And there's so much to it, including the name. But
are those rims alloy?
Jesus Christ.
We'll get into the wheels if you want. I'm Italian now. We made sure they were a little sexy.
Yeah, you did. I mean, it's a sexy car. It's an EV. You just had your unveiling at the CES, Flavio. Tell me about how this came about, because you've been making news for the last, I would say, 2-3 months, and again, leaking out information about this as you kind of continue to engineer and build. But this is a 3-year project, which also blows my mind. So how did you do it? Tell us about Project Arrow.
So I represent, so about 75% of a car is really made by the part suppliers, and then it goes to these assembly plants. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. So we represent a few hundred of them. And for the, last 6 or 7 years, we would take Lexuses that were made in Woodstock, Ontario by Toyota, like #1 plant in the world, #1 product in its segment. And we would use that platform to put new technology, connected autonomous technology on, and then take it out to the car makers in the world and say, this is Canadian autonomous drive technology or connected technology. And we thought it was a great way to kind of feature what some of these companies were doing in this emerging space. And then, I spent a couple of years on the road with the Canadian negotiating team, negotiating the new NAFTA.
That's a good-looking car.
And then, we sit there and say, who's got more schlep than anybody else? The countries that have automakers. Prime Minister challenged us in, end of 2019, said, what does Canada's zero emission future look like? Came back over here, sat down with the team, and, we've got a good little core team here, and said, we have this poster on the wall. I should have brought it out here. It was like all the components that we make in Canada. I said, I think we make a whole car here. Why don't we make a car and name it after the Avro Arrow? What that great generation of Canadians did when they had a clean sheet for technology, and then make it completely Canadian so that we can go and answer that question. What does Canada's car culture, Canada's car industry look like, and make a lighthouse and say, hey, we're going to show the world that, maybe we haven't had a new Canadian car company pop up in 100 years, but it's not for lack of technology or know-how or creativity or inspiration. And so we said we would do it. The world fell apart in between, and we did it. We said we're going to show up at the CES in January of 2023 with a car where I pulled a sheet off that is a working prototype. And, I had a lot more hair before this started, but we did it. And now we've got a story to tell around the world, right?
What a great, this is awesome, man. This is a great story.
Yeah.
It's it's one of my favorite stories right now. I mean, we're deluged with garbage and dirge, but I've been following Flavio and Project Arrow for some time, and I love gadgets. Like, dudes love gadgets, right? And so when you find out Canada's coming up with its own EV, you're like, okay, it jogs your mind, because you're like, well, we don't make cars here, right? Yeah, we make cars, but we make cars for other people. Canada makes American cars. Canada makes Japanese cars. Canada makes cars that are centered all around the world, because we have great manufacturing. We've got wonderful people. We've got lots of space to do it. We've got great tax incentives. And I was like, when I started reading about Project Arrow, Flavio, I was like, oh, well, why haven't we been doing, like, we got all the stuff. We got all the space. We got the manufacturing. We understand this. We have some of the best engineers in the world. Why did it take so long? What did you say? It was 100 years between Canada manufacturing its first car and you guys deciding to manufacture this car? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's been about 100 years since there was a new sustainable Canadian car company. That was a company that was then folded into General Motors in the 20s. And while there's been some there's been some great people that have tried what we've done over the past 100 years. Build a one-off, usually on somebody else's chassis or a concept car that doesn't work. This is the first, like this car is built to 2025 model year motor vehicle safety specs. It could go into production tomorrow. It really is made up of what we said to all the suppliers. You want to be on this? I need commercially ready technology. It's got to be scalable, and it's got to be ready for 2025, because we're going to try to sell everything that's on it and all your technology, all the automakers around the world. But like you guys are alluding to, every single conversation I've had since we've shown the car is, can we buy one? Well, the first one was 20 million. And so I keep saying to people, give me a best offer and we'll see what we can do here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what we did on this, just on that point, we said, hey, listen, I'm not going to show unobtainium to Volkswagen or to Tesla or to Mazda. We said, imagine this car had to be built at a 50,000 a year volume at a sale price for $60,000 or less. So when you give me your wheels, or you give me your seats, or you give me your infotainment, make sure that that product is what you would offer into that volume and sale price. So conceivably, this is the tech that's on it isn't crazy unobtainium. This is we didn't invent new elements here. There isn't this isn't laser guided and invisibility.
You don't have Jarvis in there telling you where to turn and giving you a like an Iron Man suit just in case things go bad. No, none of that.
No, but I do have a board of advisors that sounds a little bit like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Flavio, you're not going to market with this, or are you?
Well, the intent of the project is to show off the technology. Now, if a whole bunch of people said, we want to do this, what we said to everybody is, if you go to market, you've got to really have an understanding of what you could sell and where you can sell it, and then how much it costs to manufacture. And then you've got to have a product to go out there, and you've got to have suppliers. Well, we've covered 3/4 of that. For anybody who thinks that they want to put their capital at risk to set up a car company. But even more importantly than that, we're all seeing these car companies pop up in Silicon Valley because that is the technology hub, global technology hub.
It's also where the money is.
Yeah, where the money is, all the risk capital is for sure. But I say in Southwestern Ontario and Quebec especially, we've got the manufacturing, the IT, and then we've got access to the critical minerals in Northern Ontario and Northern Quebec that go into these batteries. We want Project Arrow to be that homework, like, where's my notebook here? I keep offering people my notebook. You can have my notes and you should do startups here. And I think, this is the public bet I've been making for people. Within 10 years, you're going to be able to buy a Canadian car. It might be the Arrow because somebody will take it over the line, but it will definitely be inspired by the Arrow, or maybe platforms and systems from the Arrow. And I want you to remember this conversation when you buy it.
Dude, I can't wait. I mean, I'm just listening to you talk about it. I mean, this is it's a glass ceiling thing for Canadian automotive manufacturing, for Canadian engineering, but it is also for Canadian natural resources, right? I mean, we're bullish on the fact that Canada is full of resources that we should be using to be able to help our people, help the economy, something we're proud of. But what I found really interesting about this, the more I kind of read about Project Arrow, were the collaborative effort. Right. Yeah. You're talking about, I think the last thing I read was 534 bids to work with you on this when you put the project out, when you called people to come and help, settled on, I think, 50 different collaborative efforts in the automotive industry, in the systems industry. And if I'm not mistaken, all the names I read that are involved in this in some capacity are competing assets. Right.
Yeah.
And what was it like? How did you get all of those competitive individuals and companies to work together on this vision? Because that never happens.
Timbits at the meetings.
Yeah.
Every time.
Timbits and like a 10-pack of coffee. Was that it?
Yeah. No pumpkin spice latte here. I'll tell you.
Oh, it's bad on the guts. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I think what happens here is because we represent all the part suppliers in the country, and there is no Canadian automotive manufacturer, we had an ability to turn around and say, look, what can we do together? And we can bring competitors to the table for different component classes. And then we had to guarantee a lot of them. I mean, there's a lot of, I should have my lawyer here as he walks through what the IP considerations were for competitors and how they access it and everything else. We turned around and said, what's unique here is while other people have tried to make cars in Canada, and we certainly would make 2 million American Japanese cars here, and they're great. And people have tried to start up companies here like Bricklands, but that was Malcolm Bricklin, who then brought us to Yugo, who brought us something and came to Canada because he got money from Nova Scotia. We said, we're going to do a design competition that is only open to Canadian post-secondary students. Then we're going to,
awesome.
This group of kids from they're young men now from Carleton University School of Industrial Design won this with that first design. You've got a couple graphics there. That first one, the kind of stylized one, that's the one they did. And then
that one,
and then what we did was, because we said we're going to build a working prototype, when you take this and you break it out, the engineering of it, you learn that that's about a 26-inch wheel. And you say, well, you can't have a 26-inch wheel, rolling resistance, all kinds of other stuff. And what we did is we took that and we engineered it to motor vehicle safety specs. And that's why that last one you showed at the show is how it came. And it's pretty true to the concept. Those guys did such a great job. But we said, let's engineer it. So actually what we did is we announced the project at CES in 2020. In 2021, we said, okay, look, we are going to open for bid. So we've got the engineering. These are 13 component classes. This is the amount of parts that we need in systems. I thought, and you can go back on the record and hear what I said. I said, well, our stretch goal is 200. We think we can get 200 companies interested. We have 534 bids. It's crazy. We represent 90% plus of the volume that's built and delivered in parts in this country. And there's got to be 150 companies we hadn't heard of. Crossover companies, IT companies, cybersecurity companies, AI companies. We did, the ultimate due diligence came down to, can you make it, is it commercially ready? Can you make it at scale for 2025? And 230 of them qualified. And then, of course, what happens is, you got a few bids for seats, a few bids for steering wheels, a few bids for wheels. You got to pick one set. And, I've said for the last couple of weeks or so, we probably could have built 4 cars with the amount of qualifying suppliers. Ultimately, we built one, but it's the greatest industrial collaboration project in Canadian automotive history. And I think, I say this humbly because it's not that we're the smartest or the prettiest, but I think only we could have done this because we represent them all. We're not in competition with any of them, and they trusted us to partition their technology properly, and then also I'll give them kind of even fare. I've done 50 interviews. I've probably talked about every single one of these companies once or twice each. Probably going to talk about them each 10 times and put them in front of automakers around the world. And that's the part that felt really good. When I say this is a Team Canada project, I mean, I got a team of 14 people here. Ontario Tech University, which was like our build partner. We built it out there in Oshawa. Right there, you see that. Like their crew, I mean, I think through this process, we're family. And then if you imagine each one of those 58 supplier companies having their skunkworks team working on the piece, we're probably 300-400 people that made this happen. And if we didn't all work together, we had to land this thing on January 5th, 2023 in Las Vegas, finished. And we had to do it on time and on budget. I didn't really have any flexibility. And I got to tell you, every single one of those people had to deliver, and they did. It was extraordinary.
What was that like unveiling it at CES? Like, was it because I'll play the video, right? And in the video itself gave me chills because I'm like, oh, this is fucking cool. This guy just made a car, like a real car. But I'll play it for you because this was the moment. Like, when you decided, hey, listen, the Automotive Parts Manufacturing Association of Canada is put all of our chips into one basket, and together we've made this vehicle, and you launched it in front of the world. Here's the video, and then I want to get your feeling because this is really cool. You like it? You like it? Everybody's like, yeah, of course I like it. Tell me about that whip though, because like we've talked about what went into it, and I want to get to the hat tip to Avro because I think that's just brilliant and just historically sensitive. I love it. But what does this car do? Because I think it's the only car that I've seen, and specifically that car, that has hardwood floors and a biometric steering wheel. So give me the goods. Tell me what this thing's all about. What do you like about this, and what's in it where you're like, that's incredible?
Well, let me tell you. Let me just say, at that moment when we unveiled it, what I was thinking was, man, I hope they like it. You look at it, you're so used to it. It's so many of us have so much invested in it, and you're like, oh my God, if it's silent when we pull this thing off here, I'm gonna die. And frankly, it was a relief. And then the buzz that came out of it was, tremendous. So here's a car that, in the style that those actually, in that clip there, you see me shaking hands with some young men at the beginning. That's that original design team, and it's a very good looking vehicle. And it opens, we've got these suicide doors, so you see all the space that's in it. And this is a car that's designed as electric from the beginning. So you got a motor in the front, a motor in the back, about 550 horsepower between the two motors, but you got so much room for that greenhouse. And that greenhouse, we worked with a guy named Richard Seal, who, one of his earlier projects was designing the interior, laying out the interior for the Virgin Galactic spacecraft, really an understanding of how to use a different space in an autonomous setting. And this is 82.5 kilowatt hour batteries made by a company out of Quebec called Volt Explorer, graphene enhanced. So we think we've got the energy density we need, but we think there's a really good story in how that graphene enhances the range, and we're going to test it when it's just come back from Las Vegas, and we're going to bring it to Toronto Auto Show. We're going to test the hell out of it. We think it'll do 0 to 60 in about 3.5 seconds. Somebody said to me, hey, that car gives me a little bit of Range Rover vibes. And then somebody else said to me, there's Lancia Delta vibes on the fender wells. And I'm like, well, you're a car guy. Range Rover guys and girls, all right, maybe you like the newest thing. But if you know what a Lancia Delta is, it is so we hired a chief engineer from Aston Martin to be to lead our engineering team, and this car has got intelligent textiles that tracks your biometrics in the steering wheel. That if you talk to Colin, our CTO, he turned around and said, look, so much of this technology, intelligent textiles, sensors, cameras that can look at your pupils, sensors that test the ambient air in there, the interaction between the driver and the road and the driver and the passenger. We say, look, if we can really program autonomous driving here, why don't we orient all these interior technologies to vehicle as a caregiver? You have a health emergency, you have a health condition, this thing will help you get to where you need to go, change the ambient temperature and or conditions if it needs to take you to where you need to get care. We've got a solar roof. We've got nanotechnology so if you looked at the windshield and you looked at the rear screen, you see none of the lines for defrost. It's just nanotech that's in there that kind of warms up the glass and melts it. But we use that nano web to do electrical connections throughout the car. So you're using nanotechnology to make connections where you otherwise would have had wires and couplings.
That exists. Nanotechnology exists for real. It's not just in a Spider-Man movie. Is that for real?
Yeah. Like
what if I'm in the car, Flavio, and I'm really thirsty? Will it take me to the bar?
Well, it depends. You'd have to put in your profile. I think yours, the car would recognize it on its way in, and
right,
and probably show it on the screen.
Yeah. Bypass your house and your garage and head straight to JT's for happy hour, dude.
I want to ask a question, and I don't want you to think this is a joke because I'm actually serious about this. Now, obviously, this car is. I mean, you just said it. Everyone's asking when you go into market, when can you buy this car, blah, blah, blah. And you ultimately have a plan to get there. But obviously you're looking for that financial backing. You're looking for somebody to step in front of this thing and go, this is a good idea. Here's a boatload of money. Now go make it work.
And you're putting words in my mouth.
There you go. You have got.
He does it to everybody. It's not just you. You're a great company. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but have you thought about Shark Tank?
You know what? I think that you probably spoke to my sons before this, because yesterday they're like,
no,
you need to go on Shark Tank.
I'm not kidding.
You have to be. There's
You
no
need-
way you're serious about him taking a brand new EV to Shark Tank. He just unveiled as a working
Kids
prototype.
are smart.
Yeah.
Kids are
They're
smart.
like-
Go to.
They're
Go to
like, hey,
Shark
why don't you go? And I said, well, no one's ever asked for $1 billion on Shark Tank before. So, I tell you, there's no shortage of offers to financially back this, Lachlan. I mean, I know where you're going on this, and we've had offers for 3 years, and what I've said to people was, okay, wait until we build it, because the point here is to demonstrate the technology. Once we've accomplished that goal, if you're really that interested, you come back to me. And a year ago and 2 years ago, there was a whole bunch of new EVs that were being backed by what people loosely know as the SPAC market, really kind of speculative money in incredible quantums. And most of those have failed and or like devalued 80-90%. And there were a lot of people who said, hey, well, why don't you do that? A few Canadians who had raised some for some recreational vehicles said, oh, we'll do this for you. And I said, well, all of that is kind of vaporware unless we build a car. And I said we were going to build a car, and nobody really believed that they thought, great idea, but they're not going to bring it over the line. And I said, let's bring it over the line. Let's prove to everybody that we can deliver on the words that we threw out there. Mm-hmm. And that you see it, you touch it, you feel it. Tell me you like it once you see it. And then once you see it and you like it and you've got money that you want to put at risk, and there's a Canadian sustainable business proposition there, then certainly you'd be talking to the right guy. So, those conversations are now starting. And I always say, here's a Canadian car. So the first thing you should tell me about your capital is you're willing to risk it in Canada. Because if you're not, then really nothing to talk about.
Do you hold that
Ryan
up
Reynolds.
as a principle? Yeah. Have you called Ryan yet? Ryan, maybe one of those guys. Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan might be a few dollars short there,
short of $1 billion.
But he's a great example of he is ultimately globally successful, but he'll tell you right off the bat he's Canadian. And ultimately here, there are so many Canadian the companies that are on this that we represent make $35 billion worth of parts a year. That they don't need somebody else's blue check mark. They can't for us to turn around and say, oh yeah, this is great. I got an offer from let's call it a European country of some of good reputation. I said, well, why don't you do it here? We think that there's a value prop for selling it here. And I said, sounds awesome, but how can we have Team Canada work so hard on this and then make a European car? Yeah.
Good for you. I love that. Now I have
not many people go, hey, listen, this has got to be Canadian or nothing when there's $1 billion on the line. And the fact that you're doing that for your team in this country and this project is fucking awesome. Sorry to interrupt.
Amazing.
Go ahead.
Appreciate that.
Now, comparatively to other electric cars, EVs, can you give us a rough idea of how this stacks up to other popular brands like the Tesla and whatnot?
Sure. I want to be humble on quality. This is a prototype, and so it's not built to production specs. And you look at it and you say, okay, look, this is the first prototype that you would ultimately crash and then build a few more. Okay, but on the specifications, I would say the car is about as big as Lexus RX or an Acura MDX, and the featuring is in and around that segment. It is it's powered similarly to a Tesla Model 3 or a Tesla Model Y. And I think I use that benchmark because they've done really well in that segment to show the market what's possible.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good stuff out there, like companies that make 8 million cars a year and 10 million cars a year, like Hyundai and Toyota and General Motors. They've got really, really good offering coming in the next 2 or 3 years. So, it's one of those things, we walked into CES, from the entrance over in, there was a Vietnamese company that has been launched, and now you could go to Yorkdale Shopping Center in Toronto and buy a car called the VinFast, and it's a similar size to their mid-range vehicle, and the finish is beautiful. Their battery capacity, their power, and their engineering is great. Their designer was Pininfarina, which is the designer for Ferrari. And we've done some business with Pininfarina. I saw the Pininfarina CEO there. I said, "Oh, you're here to show your VinFast and your Tog from Turkey, which is another beautiful car. The Turks and the Vietnamese are making cars." And I walked my team past it and I said, "We're launching a car today to showcase technology. I want you to stay humble and I want you to stay focused, because the Vietnamese have worked with Pininfarina and they have a beautiful car on offer to Canadian consumers. And the Turks have built a car with Pininfarina. It's a beautiful offer for Europeans. So before you think that you could compete in this space, let's make sure we get this thing right. Because ultimately, because we're the first ones out for Canada, and because there's such a Team Canada effort, you have a higher responsibility. We can't be slapdash with this."
Yeah, dude, it's awesome to hear you talk like that. Values, virtues, Canadiana. Let's talk about the hat tip to the Avro Arrow. It's called Project Arrow for a reason. If anybody knows about the Avro Arrow, it's one of the greatest inventions in Canadian engineering history. And Diefenbaker got a visit from someone in the United States, and they're like, "Scrap it, or we're taking over your country," something like that. Anyway, but tell us about that. What's the connection?
So the APMA, the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association that I lead, it's been around 70 years. And when we launched in 1952, we were the Automotive and Aircraft Parts Association. So a lot of our early members, before we switched 6 years later to just cars, were suppliers on the Avro Arrow. And what we said when we were going to do our own car, we said, well, we can just do our own car. And it's a car, and I think people will be happy, like, "Oh my God, look at these guys, they made a car. This is a really big engineering feat." But I said, what that group of manufacturers and engineers did 65 years ago still resonates with all of us. And what they did was they had a clean sheet from the Canadian Air Force and a blank check from the Canadian government. What can you do? And they built a jet that flew twice as high and twice as fast as the MiGs or whatever came out of the US, and they were going to go 3 times as fast. It was, I don't belabor, I think we all kind of know what happened there, or kind of know what happened there. And we always talk about how that ultimately failed as a long production run. But the thing itself was amazing, representing what Canadian engineers, innovators, designers, dreamers could do. And we said, okay, well, we're going to do a car. We're going to name it after the Arrow, and we're going to stick to that. Look, you have a clean sheet, and you can offer me whatever innovation you want. Just show me if you're the seat manufacturer, Woodbridge Group. I said, give me the best, and we'll put it in there. And like when we launched it, I was getting letters. I got letters here from people who were like, well, my grandfather worked on the Arrow, my uncle worked on the Arrow, my dad was actually, we had this great lady from, I'm going to scoop myself.
Read it.
So this is Nancy St. John. She's from Gananoque, and she said, I'm writing regarding Project Arrow. It's a concept of most compelling. It's a long read from idea to reality. She talks about, I'm writing from Gananoque, a town no more than 100 years ago. It's the Birmingham of Canada. I'm the proud daughter and granddaughter of automotive parts manufacturers, Ontario Steel Products Company. And I thought to myself, why have I seen that? I went to our archives, which is in a box on the floor here, right?
Yeah.
And I looked at our first members. Literally, that was our first member. And she talked about her father and grandfather worked there. I wrote her back. I said, hey, Nancy, I sent it to her. I said, look, and here's the first director. And a guy named E.S. Byers, she wrote me back and said, your letter inspired me to reach out to Nancy and Barbara Byers, daughter of E.S. Byers, who now reside in Toronto. The Byers girls, as my father called them, visit Gananoque. But anyway, she said, they would love to see it when you're done. And then she says, I was at a flea market in Gananoque, and I found this book. Maybe I read it. Maybe it'll inspire you. And it's a book on the original Arrow. And she goes, pay special attention to the signatures. Let me see if I can get this to the camera here.
Yeah,
signatures.
Can't make it out though. What is it?
These are autographs of people who worked on the wings and control systems and the final assembly.
Wow.
I'm like, you know what? I tell you,
that's cool.
Excuse my French, and I said it to the guys and girls in here. I go, we can't F this up. Like This is the stuff that's coming in.
Yeah.
I mean,
what a great story.
Yeah.
Well, it is, and that's it's what captured my imagination when I saw Flavio tweeting about Project Arrow and what he was doing. And some of it was like vague tweeting, right? Where it's like, it's coming, it's happening. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I didn't know it was happening. And then it came out at CES. And I'm like, dude, I got to talk to you about this because there's so many different angles because the Avro Arrow was basically pulled apart and shoved into Lake Ontario because the United States military industrial complex was like, you can't have something that's way better than our shit. Right. And so we took it in the mouth. Now Canada's leading by example, taking, the very organization that made that possible is doing that with a new EV, which is also autonomous, which is also one of the coolest things you'll ever see. It's a feat, right? It's a feat of engineering. It's a feat of collaboration. And if you know anything about Canadians, sure, we're divided when it comes to dumb people and smart people. I like to joke around about that because we're full of dumb people. But like, watching this collaboration, it is everything that is Canada, which is just incredible. As is this tweet that you put out, Flavio. And I listen, of all the things that you've done that have impressed me, maybe this impressed me the most. Sure, you've built Canada's first autonomous EV, but you're barbecuing in the middle of winter too. What is this?
I got to tell you, somebody actually wrote to me, goes, a friend of mine, he's like, we got to get you a cover. I'm like, you know what, honestly, the cover went in a windstorm, but I mean, are you Canadian? Are you really Canadian if you're not barbecuing in the winter? I mean,
I actually have a list of people I don't trust, and on it is people who don't barbecue in the winter.
Oh yeah, honest to God. And some of my neighbors like, you're crazy. I'm like, I'm crazy. All I'm doing is cooking meat. What are you doing? Putting it in the oven? How can you eat meat in the oven? Meat's got to go over a fire.
In there.
Yeah. There's a little bit of chicken.
What do you got? What do you got there? Some sausage too?
Some bratwurst, and then the chicken had some nice piri piri sauce on it. We live in a multicultural society, and I'll tell you what. I mean, this stomach is built on. Let me try everybody else's food. So, if I throw some of it on the grill in the middle of winter, it's to honor you.
Hey, quick thing. I don't know. A couple things about Flavio. Not many people know. Massive baseball fan.
Yeah.
And here's a couple quick tidbits. His son is an unbelievable baseball player. I believe he plays for the Italian national team and is on the squad for the World Baseball Classic, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, okay. He's 17. He played in the World Cup for Italy U18.
Yeah.
And got 4 hits and 3 RBIs against Mexico, got himself a D1 scholarship. And then we played Canada. I was a little torn.
Yeah.
But open to hitting against Canada. We beat Canada. Placed higher than Canada, and he's been invited to the WBC pre-camp with the Italian team. That's head coach is Mike Piazza. A guy I used to.
Mike Piazza?
Yeah,
no way.
Yeah. Mike Piazza can't walk in. I was with him in New York about 2 months ago. That guy can't walk 10 feet without being noticed, and so he moved to Italy, and so he goes 20 feet without being noticed in Italy.
Oh, no one knows who he is in Italy. I'm
sure
some
he gets 20
do.
feet. They do. I'm saying in New York, I can't. That guy can't move. That guy can't move 10 feet.
No, he can't. Yeah. But it's amazing. Like, what position does your son play? Does he play first, short?
No, he's a center fielder. But I told him, you live and die with the bat. Been hitting every day of his life since he was 9 years old. That's the.
Were you a driver? Did you make him do it? Did you take him to extras all the time? Take him to like BP? Take him to get stretched out? Get him? Are you one of those guys that really rode him?
Here's the truth. Okay. I played college baseball. I didn't want to get involved. Kid played soccer, quit soccer. And I said to him, look, you got to do something. Yeah. He's Italian. I thought, listen, we got something here. Italy had just won the World Cup. You should. And anyway, he quit. Yeah. And I said, you got to do something. He decides to play baseball. He's not that good at it. I said to him one time, I go, listen, I whispered to him, I go, hit like you're angry. And he goes, what if I'm happy? I go, God, this kid's not going anywhere. So
you're in trouble.
So then I subbed in.
Put skates on.
Yeah, I subbed in to coach for him one day. He got a couple hits, and I go, "What's happening?" He goes, well, could you coach me? So I said, if I coach you, we're gonna do it my way. And my way means we're gonna set up a net in the basement. You're gonna hit every day. Look, everything else, I want you to enjoy it, but you're gonna hit every day. And the basement, I've since redone the walls and repainted, but I left a couple of like half ball marks just rammed into the wall. We set up a batting cage in the garage. And then he got too big for the garage. And so a place called Baseline Sports in Toronto, he's been there every single day since. And you could tell the difference. There's a lesson for everybody. It's like, enjoy what you're doing. But if you're not going to practice, you're not going to go anywhere. But if you do practice, God, the sky's the limit.
Dude,
well,
and it's so
and
true.
some abuse. Some abuse really helps.
Light abuse, some guilt, some manipulation, that kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly. That's what works. Hey, you don't get to build the first EV in Canada and have a kid who's like a burgeoning baseball stud without being that guy, right? Who's like, no. We're gonna do it. Plus, you've got some of that old school Italian in you, right?
Yeah,
where it's like, no. There's playtime. Now's the time for work. Now's the time to get to it.
I'll tell you what, it would be a tap on the shoulder and let's go hit a couple buckets. Let me give you an anecdote on my two boys and their names and where Ferrari fits into the story. So
you really like cars.
Oh man, I'm such a car guy. Everybody thinks I'm a technology guy. I mean, yeah, okay, great. I've learned to be a technology, but I'm a car guy. Okay.
All right.
So name the last kid, my third kid, after the first guy to win a race for Ferrari. His name is Tazio. The first guy to win a race for Ferrari is the greatest driver of all time, Tazio Nuvolati. Okay. So now I named him that. My mother goes, well, how would you give a baby that name? My 85-year-old uncle said, Nuvolati. And I said, great. The other guy, I named him after Alexander the Great, but I since found in such a coincidence, we gave him the first name and then the two middle initials are his two grandfathers, Alessandro Antonio Giuseppe Volpe. This is a baseball player. Who invented the battery? Why do we call the unit of power volt? Alessandro Giuseppe Antonio Volta. So now when I do my shtick, I say to people, hey, by the way, name one guy after the first guy to win a race for Ferrari and the other guy after the guy who invented batteries. Who better to make a sporty electric vehicle? And everyone's like, oh, wow, that's great. Well, that's half true. We called Ferrari and we said, I'm going to be in town for baseball, ironically. And I said, can I come and see you? Well, there's a few Canadian companies that already supply Ferrari. So I go there. They give me an audience with the CEO. Who's a guy who's moved in from the semiconductor business to a company that we think, look, we all love the way Ferraris sound and feel. If they go electric, do they lose some of that? So he gives me a meeting. I tell him about Project Arrow. He brings his whole leadership team in. I say, well, these are commercially ready technologies. Can I show them to you? And he goes, yeah, we'd like to come to Canada to see it. And if you can make any intros. And so, I mean, we've been going back and forth with Ferrari for the last 6 or 7 months. And I got to tell you, there are a more than just a short list of suppliers on the Arrow that have intrigued the greatest car company in the world. And that's one of the 14 automakers that showed up in CES to come and look at the Arrow. And I got to tell you, I mean, even if we don't build this thing into production, there are going to be stories about so many of these companies on so many of these Canadian suppliers on so many of these cars around the world as we build them out. We're already a success. The most powerful CEO in the business, a guy who runs a company called Stellantis, which is the Chrysler, Dodge, Ram, Jeep, Maserati, Alfa Romeo, Renault, Citroen conglomerate. He showed up at our launch. Right as I'm pulling the sheet, somebody goes to me, Carlos Tavares is here. You got to go talk to him. Like I'm in the middle of something. Mm-hmm. I went to talk to him.
Can you give me a minute?
Yeah. I go to talk to him. He goes, why did you do this? And I said, well, I wanted to feature the technology. He goes, but why did you need to do it? Don't we already buy from these companies? I go, well, probably from 20 of them. He goes, well, tell me about the other 38. And I said, well, that's the point.
Fascinating, dude. And that's relationships. It's networking. It's talking to people. It's just happenstance. But I did last question, because you just said Ferrari's the greatest car company in the world. Did you cry watching Ford versus Ferrari? Yes or no?
I cried at how inaccurate it was as it painted how the old man was. Hey, maybe one of the greatest cars ever is that GT40. I got to tell you, man, if I had a dream garage, that GT40 would be in there, but the rest would be red with horses on them.
Yeah, I know they would, buddy. It's okay. It's okay. We all have biases. Flavio Volpe, the president of the APMA, the Automotive Parts Manufacturing Association of Canada. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for having pride in this country and its processes and its people and its engineers and its resources. I want to thank you for doing this in 3 years, which is basically unheard of. Thank you for spending some time with us today, because I know you're incredibly busy. Please keep us top of mind when you're doing test drives. Please.
We'll do it, and we'll do it. We should take you two guys out this summer as we get out on the test track.
I will fly out there to test drive.
Oh yeah, without question.
And the car will be at the Toronto Auto Show. So anybody who's watching this saying, well, how am I going to see it? Come to Toronto Auto Show. We're bringing it there.
When is that? Is it coming up? That's coming up soon.
Middle of February.
Middle of February. Yeah. Toronto Auto Show. Yeah, Toronto International Auto Show. So you can go and check it out.
Let's have you back for a quick reminder before that, right? So
happy to do it.
Yeah.
Are you? Did you have fun? Fun enough? We weren't that bad. Little tidbit here. Here's the thing. So Flavio jumps on before we start, and he lives in Toronto. Lived in Toronto for a long period of time. Still live in Toronto? Is that
I'm in Toronto. I'm Toronto.
You're in Toronto.
Raised, yeah.
So I'm like, hey man, how you doing? He's like, yeah, it's good. I said, hey, big fan of yours because I'm following you. He goes, I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of yours. I listened to your radio show for a long time. And I'm like, I keep forgetting about that.
Yeah. And I think we're just about the same age. So you got to the platform a little bit before me, and I was very happy to come on here. I didn't know Lachlan was going to be on. I mean, but I'm happy to meet new people.
I'm okay with that, Flavio.
Lachlan's the host of a morning show at Edmonton. One of Edmonton's biggest. Is one of the best rock and roll radio shows in Canada. So we'll get you on that show too. Easy.
I know.
Flavio, absolute pleasure. Grateful for your time. I say this all the time. People can give you things, but giving us our time is so much more important because you can't get it back. So the fact you donated it to us today, incredible. Can you come back again and update us as you continue to change the world? Yeah.
Well, that's generous, but yes, I will come.
Shark Tank.
No, you're going to change the world. You're a world change. No, not Shark Tank. Not Dragon's
Den.
No, don't do it.
I won't. Listen, I won't. I'll come back to you first.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it, Flavio. You have a great day, pal.
Thanks, guys. Ciao.
All right, take care. Flavio Volpe from.
Oh my God, I love that man.
Isn't he fucking great?
How do you not like that guy?
He's so easy going.
I just want to go out and start a Canadian company now.
So last week, he unveils this car in Vegas, and then like 2 days later, he's like, "I'm in Mexico at trilateral meetings with the Prime Minister and his cabinet," and I'm like, "That guy's awesome."
They're gonna make that car. They're gonna make that freaking car.
I know, and that's the guy. That's the guy to do it.
That's the guy that does it. That guy doesn't not do it. How do you not do it if you're that guy? I mean, his name's Flavio.
Yeah,
I wasn't wrong about the waving hair on a horse and sword.
What, like after I introduced him? Oh, you're talking about Fabio. You're not talking about Flavio. Flavio.
That's what I thought when you said his name. I thought for sure we're going to see a guy on a cliffside.
Well, it's because I introduced him like a hero because he is. Dude made a fucking electrical car from scratch in 3 years. I'm like, and it's awesome. That's the other thing. It's not like it looks like a go-kart.
I'd buy that car.
Like an unbelievable looking vehicle, and it's got maple floors. It's got hardwood floors.
I'd buy that car tomorrow.
I would too. And I'm in the market for one too, by the way. And I'm really struggling because I'm like, I should probably get an EV, but I think I'm going to wait till 2025 if that comes out in 2020. I can drive my 8-year-old Genesis, no problem. I'll wait.
We went shopping.
I'll wait and show my pride in this country by buying that unbelievable vehicle. You nuts?
My wife and I on Saturday.
Yeah.
And we sort of narrowed down. We've done quite a bit of research on the electric, and again, we thought we would do the hybrid, and just a lot of reading over the last couple of months because we've been talking about this for quite some time.
Let's be serious. You're not really doing the reading, are you? It's your wife. She's doing the reading.
No, I swear to God,
man, you reading?
I have been because I legitimately want to figure out whether or not this is, and I'm not going to get
a Tesla. Don't get a Tesla.
I'm not getting a Tesla.
Don't get a fucking Tesla.
We're not getting an electric vehicle, and we're not getting a hybrid. Honestly,
you're staying gas. You're going gas.
Yeah, we're going to stay. We live in Edmonton. And again, I want to be part of the solution. That's why we were really investigating it. But you know what? Honestly, with where cars are priced and just what our budget is, we have a chance to pay cash for a vehicle. But at the end of the day, if we buy a hybrid or an electric, and I actually, after we were so not disgusted. The process of buying a car is extremely
invasive. It sucks ass. You know you're getting hosed every time you buy one.
Yeah.
I get it.
And I remember looking at that piece of paper going, where do you even start with this? And I just looked at them and said, we're not buying a car today. What are you disappointed with your trade?
You look at people when you go to buy stuff, you look at people that are trying to sell you that stuff you're going to buy, like they're going to fuck you, don't you? Like you look at it like, I know you're fucking me, even though they might not be. That's just an automatic.
No. They're looking right at you, and they made every judgment possible, and they've decided on what to put down on that piece of paper based on what they think they can get away with.
Why don't you get just dressed up like you're poor and go in there and do it? That's what my dad used to do. He used to get dressed up like he was homeless and go buy cars. He's like, I don't have a lot of money, so you're gonna have to help me out here.
I look homeless already.
Well, no, you don't. You got to fucking like really homeless it up.
Okay. Yeah,
dirty fingernails.
The next thing I'll do.
Dirty
like
fingernails. Let the hair grow on your face and stuff, and your clothes like a nice gravy stain on a shirt. Wear like oddly colored boots, like one boot and then one shoe, and no sock, like only one sock. And then just go, does it look like I've got money for this kind of car? This is all I have. I'm willing to give it to you.
I've literally watched people shop for cars that go in and I didn't do this because I don't have it in me right now, right? But I watched a guy one time walk into I used to do these all day remotes, and I used to see this guy all the time, and he would walk in and they would go, all right, I want that truck. And he would they would write down, and they'd give him a piece of paper, and he would go, all right. And then he would write down a number, and it would be like $25,000 less than what they're saying. And he'd go, give me that or I'm walking out. Can't do it.
Just keep going places until they budge.
But you know what? Literally, he'd get that deal.
Yeah.
But then
you don't have that in you? Do you get too angry when you're negotiating? Is that your problem? You get a little triggered?
I'm the guy that gets taken advantage of in negotiating processes like that, right?
Well, because you get tired of it, because you get angry. You're like me. Out.
Yeah,
I know. You're like, fuck you.
Because they offered me about a quarter of what I can get for my vehicle. Like legit. I don't want to get into the details but they legitimately, I know, I'm literally looking on Kijiji.
Shocker.
I'm looking on Kijiji, and I'm like, I said to the wife, I was like, we get like 17 grand for this car. Like, I can't believe it. It's got 200,000 K on it. Like, look at this. She goes, I know, Subaru. I know. And then they come out walking out and they go, we'll give you $6,000 for your trade-in. I'm like, all right, let's go. Come on.
Did you
let's
do
go,
one
honey.
Of those?
Well, not only that, you never know what the original price of the vehicle is. So
but you guys aren't idiots. Like, you're one of those guys that likes to shop around and you like to sell things on your own and stuff like that. So just fucking sell it on your own and take the 17 grand, put it on a new car.
And that's what I will do. But we've now decided what we want, and now we want to make sure we're comfortable. Like, if the furnace goes on one of my 14 rental properties, but if I blow it all on a car, we're not going to be able to, you know what I mean?
Afford it.
And I got to go get a loan for the.
No, you just put it on your Visa and pay it off over like 12 months. Anyway, great to have him on. It was awesome. Thanks to Flavio Volpe and the APMA.
I can't tell you how inspiring that story
was. Right? I know.
Unbelievable. Like, if you can't get excited about this country and the people that we have in it, and the ingenuity that we have from the people that live in this country after that conversation. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was awesome.
So inspiring.
It really, really was. And what I like to do is introduce dichotomies to people. So part of this show is we're going to go from inspiring to why the fuck are we still talking about this? I swear to God, I have tried so hard and you know this, right? To not talk about COVID. To not talk about disinformation, to not talk about misinformation, but a couple of things happened.
We've legitimately had conversations where
we're like, I'm not fucking talking about it. Listen, everybody's. I'm
Danielle
vaccinated.
Smith, stop.
3 years. Fuck her. Not even talking about her anymore. Not talking about the institution, but we have to today because a couple of things happened, and I invited our boy James DiFiore from Blackballed the podcast to come back, Mr. DiFiore, and we talked about you as one of the success stories yesterday in the podcast. By the way, I don't know if you know that. It's like one of the biggest podcasts in the network. It's one of the biggest, fastest growing podcasts in Canada, Blackballed. You do such a great job, dude. Great to see you again.
Great to see you guys. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And Lachlan, I have, if our friendship wasn't the correct way for you to go before, I will tell you that this is my barbecue. So you're right not to trust me. I haven't opened that thing since like November.
Yeah, dude. I barbecue in the winter too. I'm one of those guys that barbecues in the winter. No. And I'm like Lachlan. I don't trust people that don't.
But do you know how to pan-sear a steak like the French? Because if you know how to do that, then don't worry about
like with butter, or you just pour butter all over it and baste in butter all the time. It's not bad.
cast iron, fucking, 500 degrees.
Yeah,
it's all good.
All sticky bits in there. Anyway, good to see you, buddy. How are you?
Good to see you. I'm good.
Yeah. The reason why I wanted you to come on is because you're a big Sam Harris fan, and this weekend a couple of things happened. And actually, last week and then this weekend, and again, like Lachlan and I, we're done talking about vaccines because I'm like, fuck, if you don't get it by now, if you're not vaccinated, if you're still talking about it, if you're still dummying people over fucking masks and what you should or shouldn't be doing, you can go fuck yourself. I don't care what side of the equation you're on. Go fuck yourself. I just exhausted by the whole thing. Now, two things happened this last week. Joe Rogan and Brett Weinstein did a podcast where they waxed poetic about vaccine injuries, which, by the way, was from a tweet which was fake, and they had to go back and apologize, and that fucking interview doesn't exist anymore. We'll get to that. And then Sam Harris took it in the mouth. Now, if you don't know anything about Sam Harris, he is a neuroscientist. He is a philosopher. And he could be one of the smartest individuals. And to that point, I don't know that he's ever been wrong about anything that I've ever listened to the man talk about, whether it's religion, whether it's meditation, whether it's psilocybin, whether it's LSD, whether it's Stoic philosophy. He's a practicing Stoic, and I fucking dig that about the guy. He's just as cerebral, academic, and as intellectual. PhD in neuroscience from Stanford. He's like literally one of the world's most preeminent philosophers in Stoic philosophy. And he's got a couple of different apps. He's got a bunch of books where he sewers faith and religion, where he talks about how to make sense of the world, where he talks about waking up. He's got an app called Waking Up, which I utilize every single day. It's got
I know this guy. That
incredible Stoic series with William C. Irvine that talks about your feeding your good wolf and not the you gotta fuck it. Like, this guy is a culture, community, and philosophy leader, and he's never wrong because he's smart. Now, over the weekend, he was on a podcast. Podcast was the John Wood Jr. podcast, and he was asked about a couple of things to do with COVID. Now, this guy and Brett Weinstein have gone head to head, and he's just crushed him in a couple of debates. Like, Brett Weinstein is Joe Rogan's buddy. He's a disgraced doctor. He's an ivermectin salesperson. And he fucking hates black people. He's just a fucking asshole. So anyway, Brett Weinstein is just full on disgrace, and he was on Rogan's podcast earlier. We'll get to that. But they hate him. Joe Rogan and Brett Weinstein, the American industrial religious complex, every single person that isn't vaccinated fucking hates this guy. And every single Christian in North America hates this guy because he continually proves that God doesn't exist and religion is nothing but an opium for the masses and effectively a cult. All religions, man-made religions, are cult. And I truly fucking believe that. And it's not from him. It's from my experience in the church. Anyway, long story short, Sam appears on a podcast where he has the audacity to suggest that more people would get vaccinated if kids were the target of COVID, if more children had died of COVID, and if we have grown boils on our faces. He said we wouldn't have this divergence in society. We just wouldn't. And
so
I'm gonna
back up. Who said that?
Sam Harris. I'm gonna play it for you. Now, it's 5 minutes long, so you can, enjoy a coffee, but I highly encourage everybody to listen very intently to one of the world's most preeminent neuroscientists and probably the most preeminent philosopher, popularizer of philosophy, meditation of our time. Listen very carefully, and then we're going to discuss it. 5 minutes. We'll be right back.
Take it back to COVID for a second. In one way, and we got very lucky that COVID wasn't worse than it was, right? It could have been much, much worse. It could have been 10 times as deadly or 50 times as deadly. And we would have lived through, or many of us wouldn't have lived through, something truly awful. But had COVID been worse, just enough worse to really get our attention, to really be undeniable, we would have had a different political conversation around it. There wouldn't have been the same kind of vaccine skepticism. Brett Weinstein would not have been releasing 80 straight podcasts on the dangers of the vaccine if a few variables were changed. I mean, just take that, leave COVID exactly as it is, but just make it preferentially dangerous to children rather than to old people, right? You just flip that around, the variable of age. If kids were dying by the hundreds of thousands from COVID, at a rate of whatever it was, 1%, say. But if it was pretty much all kids, we would have had a very different experience, right? And the patience, that there would have been no fucking patience for vaccine skepticism, right? And everyone would have recognized that this is not my body, my choice. This is, you're not going to kill my kids with your ignorance, right? And you change one other variable. What if the vaccines actually really did block transmission much better than they in fact did, right? And there was a moment where it was only rational to expect them to block transmission. Turns out they don't do it nearly as much as we would hope at this point. They just shorten the window by which, during which transmission is possible. If they're even doing that now, I don't know. But let's say the vaccines really did block transmission, but then nothing else was, all of the other mishigas about how, untested they are and how dangerous they yet might be, and the spike protein and blah, blah, blah. Leave all that in place. Just give me a little more transmission blockage and give me kids being preferentially killed or injured by this disease. The obscenity of much of what was said, much of what was said about COVID at the time at which it was said, the conspiracy thinking, the platforming of people who were obviously unwell and unbalanced professionally and mentally around vaccines and their skepticism, the patience for that would have been non-existent, right? And so in some sense, we got unlucky at how benign this was and how mysterious it could yet seem, because you could run the argument, well, did he die from COVID or with COVID? He was 80 years old, right? That was the situation we were in. I'm saying that there are changes in the real world that could have happened and could yet happen that would have been immensely clarifying, right? And there would have been no less. I'm just asking questions routine would have not gotten anyone anywhere worth going, right? And that's I think part of what we're talking about here is, with respect to Trump and with respect to COVID, are just contingent facts of these, unique situations, which had they been a little bit different, we wouldn't have fragmented in the same way, right? You dial up the risk of COVID, or if COVID just had been, just made you physically ugly, right? Like if COVID was monkeypox, right? And you had pustules on your face, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's different than the hypothetical experience we all had of, is it a cold? Is it a flu? Is it COVID? Who knows? I'm not saying I wish for those things, because those are pictures of a worse suffering for people. But had those things been in place, I just don't think we would have witnessed the same kind of shattering of our society around this particular variable. And again, so I pivot back to the possibility that if we could get a more normal Republican candidate who was not at the center of a personality cult built on misinformation, there could be a swing back to something more recognizable.
So that was about 5 minutes. I know it was heavy. There's a lot in there to unpack, even though it was only 5 minutes. The rest of the podcast is excellent. You can disagree with parts of what he said in terms of what you think he was trying to get at. But what amazed me about that, James, is the shit kicking he took from the same old characters, from Joe Rogan to Brett Weinstein to Gad Saad to Jordan Peterson, same group, same guys, all saying the same thing, is that he's crazy for suggesting that the fragmentation of society, by and large, was caused by the fact that COVID wasn't what some people told us it might be, and the very unserious people out there who don't understand science didn't give a shit about the outcome for other people because it didn't touch them in the right places. Is there any other way to see that? Is there any other way to look at that? Because everybody else that's pissed off with him is part of that anti-vax crew where they're like, finally, he admitted COVID isn't a big deal, which is not what he said, right? Finally, he admitted that this wasn't as bad as it was, and it's not what he said. But
no,
do you not see it the way
that
if
it was killing kids, we wouldn't have had the same
if you had
conversation.
fucking boils on your
it
face,
just killed
old
lined people.
Up. Yeah, yeah,
he was right.
Exactly.
Especially the kid argument. You know, Absolutely. He has Sam Harris is interesting because he was sort of put into that intellectual dark web group with Peterson, with Eric Weinstein and his brother, Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan. And he has kind of emerged almost as if to say, no, thank you. You know, but he's been on Joe Rogan several times. And he's, I think he's even had a podcast or two with Weinstein as well. But clearly he's the rationalist out of all of those people. He, you know, and he was the big three for guys like me who are like militant anti-theists at one time. He was one of the big three. It was him, Hitchens, and Dawkins. And that's who we consumed when we wanted to listen to someone rationalize religion. And what he's saying there, do you remember when I interviewed Max Bernier and I asked him if it was leprosy, would you agree with like
I remember that
sheltering in place? And he's like, no. Like, well, I don't know what to say to you then.
And you're a fucking idiot. Yeah.
They don't want to admit it because it shows who they really are. And that's why people are so angry about that statement. Because he didn't say COVID wasn't bad. He said people didn't take it as seriously as they should have because it didn't touch the right buttons in their psyche. And he's saying things that are difficult to say out loud, right? And that's the world we live in right now. Because when you explore conversations like he's exploring, it triggers people, and it takes the right type of personality to be able to have that conversation. I don't have it because I'm the guy that just goes, well, just
shut the fuck up.
I had a guy here, a friend of mine, doing some work for me, and he made a couple of comments, and I remember it was about the second or third comment where I realized, oh, okay, he's an anti-vaxxer. And I just stopped him and I said, listen, Jeff, this is not going to work because I'm not going to have this conversation with you because you've already made up your mind and I'm clearly made up my mind. So if we're going to get along, if this is going to be an amicable situation and I'm going to be out here with you, and we're going to interact, we're not going there. And he went, oh, okay. And he shut it down. Got a text from him on the weekend because he still needs to do a bit of work for me. And he goes, yeah, I got COVID. Haven't been able to leave the house. I can't get off the couch. My wife wants to take me to the hospital. I'm so sick. His next bubble, I guess this thing's real after all.
Wow. Fucking Jeff, eh? Classic Jeff.
It's always Jeff, isn't it? It's always Jeff or Daryl or Terry.
It's his name. I can't even make that up.
Well, but
we had such a strong segment of the population where it didn't impact them. It didn't seep into their world.
Yeah.
Right. Then there was
lose
a couple of guys
one. They didn't get
got
COVID.
Sick. That went. It was nothing. It was nothing. I ate this stuff and I've been working out and I've been juicing and I'm fine. It didn't even bother me. My kids got it too. It was like the sniffles.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and so they downplayed it from day one. Right. And the fact that some people died and that they even knew that people had died.
48,000 Canadians. 2 years.
Didn't have an impact on their ability to turn it into something that they didn't want it to be. Right?
Well, it's because it didn't touch their dumb brains, right? Like that's kind of where we're at, right? I don't care if anybody's vaccinated anymore. I'm vaccinated. Everybody I know is vaccinated. I don't give a fuck if you're not vaccinated. I don't care. You're going to bear the brunt of it.
Vince Djokovic, though.
Yeah, I do too. I don't mind.
Like I want him to lose. I'm watching him this morning. I'm like, I hope you lose, you piece of shit.
And I don't care, right? I don't care. To the point where I'm in a black car this weekend, so we had a car service come pick us up, take us to Niagara Falls for this big Niagara Falls thing. The driver of my car was an unbelievable guy, young man. He discloses to me he's not vaccinated and asks me if that's okay. I'm like, yeah, I don't care. He's like, oh, thank God, because I saw your name. And I was like, whew. And I'm like, dude, I don't care. I do not care.
You're like, I don't care. That window between us goes up.
No, there's no window. I was just in the back seat. It was Suburban.
Okay.
And he's like, okay, well, why don't you care anymore? I go, oh, I never cared. I only cared before we got to herd immunity, that we got to hear herd immunity. And then I did the right thing. And I did the right thing for my families and all that other stuff, because that's what I did. And I understand science. And he's like, you know what? I didn't get vaccinated, but it's not that I didn't want to. I had these existing issues and all that other stuff. And I said, that's great. Were you an asshole about it? Were you a cock about it? And he's like, no. I said, did you tell other people not to get vaccinated? He says, no. Did you tell them spike proteins get in your wiener and explode your prostate? No. Did you show up to a fucking protest?
I have heard that's true, though.
I hope it is. Yeah.
You want to keep spike proteins away from your urethra.
Your penis. He's like, no. I go, well, then you're good, because I'm not concerned about you. It's the people that are out there actively telling everybody that it's a lie and using fake information to do it, like Joe Rogan. Let me play this for you, okay? Now, Joe Rogan recently apologized. And by the way, Joe Rogan, no shortage of apologies online. Pages and pages and pages of apologizing for racial slurs and bogus tweets and bogus news stories and fucking over Spotify. Pages and pages and pages. I just showed them to you. Joe Rogan decides he's going to bring that dickwad that my boy Sam Harris was calling a dickwad by doing 80 straight podcasts on ivermectin about why this woman, a female doctor in Miami, would choose to tweet about how terrible the vaccine is. Even if she dies, she's really happy she got it and doesn't care about side effects. I'll play the video for you because it's really fascinating. And it only gets fascinating at the end. There's an 11-minute clip which is now missing from Joe Rogan's podcast. This is it. This is part of it. It's
what was the guess?
Brett Weinstein, disgraced doctor from Evergreen. How do you describe Brett Weinstein, James? How would you kind of blame him?
He started off okay, and then he got crazy with fame. Same thing happened to Jordan Peterson, right? Like as soon as he became a household name among certain groups,
there it is.
He kind of fell off his rocker. He became, just in case people don't remember who this guy is, he was a professor at a university. The name of the university escapes me right
now.
Evergreen. And I thought he was
like
actually
the guitar player from Mario Speedwagon.
No, yeah, that's right. It's not him. It's not the same guy. But there was a student protest at the school. Usually every year on the same date, all of the students of color would skip school or whatever, would just not show up. And this time they demanded that the white teachers are the ones that shouldn't go to work. And he was like, I'm not doing that. And I actually agreed with him. I thought it was fine. And then he became kind of a household name, did the podcast tour and everything. And then as soon as COVID hit, he became completely fucking wacky.
Well, he's an ivermectin salesperson. He gets paid by the makers of ivermectin.
Does he really?
Yeah. Yeah, Brett Weinstein.
Wow. Are you sure about that?
100%.
Should we be saying that out loud?
Yeah, I'm going to say it out loud. 100%.
Get your chewable ivermectin here. Chewable ivermectin.
No, he's been deplatformed 20 times. Like, he's been fired by everybody. He's got no friends. And the only way he makes money is by going on Rogan and then doing speaking engagements for other rednecks and stupid hillbillies. Sorry, Locke. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, it's funny because we have you guys seen that commercial?
Yes, I've seen several.
Today. Ozempic? Ozempic. Have you guys seen the commercial for that one where it's like, what's Ozempic? My friend takes Ozempic, but they never really say what the fuck it is.
Yeah.
I brought that up to Grant because I've been doing something to my wife for the last couple months because we see that.
Do we want to hear it here?
No. Yes, we do. Hold on, because It does have a point.
Okay.
So every time the commercial plays, we always go, do you know what Ozempic? And both of us still to this day don't know what Ozempic is. So I've been putting it on our grocery list every week. And she gets a bit of a chuckle out of it. So I brought it up to Grant, and Grant goes, that's a diabetes drug, and people have been taking it for weight loss. And the thing that I talked to Grant about was these drug companies, they don't really care if you're taking it for the wrong fucking reason.
No, they just want to
because
sell you
they're
the drugs.
making millions of fucking dollars
Yeah.
from taking these drugs. And it's so crooked. It's so backwards.
But it doesn't mean COVID doesn't exist. Just so you know.
But they don't care because
I know
all these assholes are buying ivermectin like it's going out of and
still
these stories about these people on TikTok taking this Ozempic for weight loss when they don't have diabetes is rampant, and people are taking these drugs they're not supposed to be taking.
Almost all the biggest drugs
are making money.
Almost all the biggest drugs had an intended application that it turned out
black market. Yeah.
Yeah, like what was it? Zyban, this anti-smoking drug, was an antidepressant, right?
Yeah,
Viagra
heart medication.
Was a heart medication. So
just gave guys boners. Can you imagine having a bad ticker and walking around with a heart on all the time and be like, these are the fucking best drugs in the world?
Yes, I can.
Funny story about Viagra too is the company that makes it has a plant in Ireland, and they're by a river, and they didn't have any regulation on that company. That's why they were in Ireland. And they were dumping the waste product in the water, and people were complaining because all the dogs and animals were wandering around with boners all the time. It's a true story. That's not true.
That doctor from Florida put that tweet out that said that, I think.
That's a true story.
Viagra, hang on. A dog boners.
All the stray dogs.
Boners. I just put that in my even the dogs. 1997. It's true. Quote, even the dogs rock around with rock hard erections, said the mayor of Cork.
Cork. It was Cork, too. She can't even
thanks to the Viagra plant, which has been there since 1997. Villagers claim the area is full of love fumes and water that's wastewater from the plant, which gifts local men inhuman sexual prowess. However, the dogs also like to fuck too, apparently. Yeah, that's a true story.
Dash hounds be like, y'all wiener dogs now, motherfuckers.
Anyway, let's get to the Rogan clip where he reads a tweet from a doctor who allegedly says she's vaccinated and doesn't care if she dies or there's terrible fucking side effects. And then we'll meet on the other side of it. This is him and Brett Weinstein. Doesn't exist anymore. So enjoy it. And then on the other side, we'll talk about why you take medical advice from a guy who apologizes for getting shit wrong all the time. Let's watch together.
Put this up. This woman tweeted, "I will never regret the vaccine, even if it turns out I injected actual poison and have only days to live. My heart was in the right place. I got vaccinated out of love, while anti-vaxxers did everything out of hate. If I have to die because of my love for the world, then so be it. But I will never regret or apologize for it." It's a fascinating perspective. And it's also a fascinating perspective that this person claims to be about love, but has the most uncharitable view of people who didn't get vaccinated. That everyone got anti-vax out of hate. The idea that I didn't get vaccinated out of hate, I find so ridiculous. Like, I don't hate anyone. I am a loving person. I do it on purpose. I go out of my way to be as charitable and as kind as possible. And when I don't, I feel very disappointed in myself. If I make any decision or a statement that I feel like doesn't align with that, maybe flippantly in the moment, maybe joking around, I'm very disappointed in myself. I'm very self-critical. When I see something like that, I'm like, that is ideological capture at its highest level. Because put that back up again. So what you're seeing, one of the things that she's realizing here is that there is a narrative. And one of the narratives is the vaccine might be bad for you. So she's saying, even if it turns out I injected actual poison, the idea that you wouldn't be upset that you were duped into injecting actual poison when you were thinking that this was somehow going to save people and save the world is so insane that wouldn't bother you. But you are uncharitably categorizing all people who are hesitant and getting an experimental medical intervention that's never been tried on mass amounts of human beings in human history, and that there's no long-term data to suggest anything safety, dangers.
All of that's a lie, by the way.
She's a doctor, a medical doctor. She should know about the VAER system. And she should know that although there are people that report things that turn out to not be correct, there's a very low number of vaccine injuries that get reported in respect to the actual number of vaccine injuries that take place. And in the past, that number has been estimated with previous diseases to be in the neighborhood of 1%. So for every...
Notice he has no receipts and is just citing studies, past studies. No receipts. All of these things he's saying are lies. Joe Rogan is an absolute fucking patronizing liar. Keep listening.
100 people that has a vaccine injury, one of them gets reported into the VAER system. I don't know what the number is.
The VAER system, I read yesterday, someone put a vaccine death related to masturbation. It is not only not regulated, it is just full of pranks. So whatever.
With SARS, CoV-2, I don't think anyone knows because we hear stories.
Yeah, they do. You don't know because you're unprepared. That's why you sound like a fucking moron.
I mean, it's so anecdotal. I hesitate to even discuss it. I know this guy and he had a stroke and they knew it because of the vaccine, but the doctors wouldn't put that in the VAER system and they refused to put it in the VAER system. You hear about all these stories. And then you hear about financial incentives that were in place.
Hearing about stories and he's not giving any specifics and he doesn't have any receipts yet again.
To not just say that someone died from COVID, but that different financial incentives were in place to use certain protocols, medical protocols and treatments. So they were financially incentivized to use certain things, certain medications.
Also a lie.
And then if the person was treated, if the person was ventilated, there's more financial incentives. Remdesivir, there's different things there was financial incentives in private hospitals. So these are businesses, and these businesses run a lot of them. It's a very precarious business. They're not necessarily always making money. And this.
So there we go. Rambling. This woman's an idiot. Rambling. Vaccine injuries are real. Rambling. No receipts. Nothing to point to. No studies. No double-blind placebo. No peer-reviewed. No nothing. Just making shit up. And do you know how I know he's making that shit up, Locke? I know you don't mind listening to a little Rogan, and I know you're one of the smart guys. I do
occasionally.
You're smart. You separate that from the other stuff.
Very guest oriented. I still haven't figured out why he is so stupid on that side of the fence.
Because he gets paid by that complex, dude. Though it is a cabal. It's the same reason it's the same fucking losers on the show all the time. Just to reinforce this thing so he can stay in the base. That's it. But do you know how I know he's full of shit? He apologized for that whole thing. Do you know why he apologized for the whole thing? Because the tweet he was referring to is totally fake. Joe Rogan, this is from Forbes. It's widely now reported edits podcast apologizes after promoting hoax tweet. Here's the apology. I was informed last night that this tweet is fake. The show is already out. So we initially decided just to post a notice saying we got tricked. Then later thought it best just to delete it from the episode. My sincere apologies, especially the person who got hoaxed. You hoaxed her. Joe, you did that.
Well,
when I saw that
give
tweet,
him some credit.
No, I give him no credit.
A lot of guys,
zero credit. I'll tell you why.
Don't apologize.
Well, no, because this is what he does every time he does something dangerous and wrong and gets caught. He just says, "Oh, I didn't know. Sorry." Like, you're doing a podcast, the biggest in the world. Would you not check to verify if a tweet you're using to justify the fact that the government has a cabal of people out there to kill healthy individuals with an experimental vaccine, would you not verify that tweet? The date was wrong. There were 333 characters. Dude, I'm an idiot. And the second I saw that last week, and I didn't talk about it because I'm like full up to here talking about COVID and the idiots that are continually driving disinformation and misinformation. Yeah. Not only did he not check, and that is his only job to get that information.
That's Jamie's
right.
job.
That's Jamie's job from the Joe Rogan show.
Jamie's
Apparently
pretty good
didn't get that right.
at catching catching him occasionally. I've heard him step in a pile
and
of
say
shit,
you're wrong.
Jamie will go, yeah, because
I don't think that's
Jamie
right.
has
But my
done
point,
fact checking behind
my
the
point
scenes
exists.
sometimes.
My point exists is that if you're going to continually take medical/life advice from a guy who has 43 million pages of apologies, and I'm not kidding you, on Twitter and Google, index 43 million results for Joe Rogan apologies. It's his strategy, dude. It is the same. It'll never end. And he's always wrong because he doesn't give a fuck about you. When he says, I love people, I want people. No, he doesn't. He just used a fucking tweet to basically dox a woman who didn't write the tweet. And on top of it, that woman's been receiving death threats for 5 straight days. 5 days of death threats. James,
you don't think that it was more about him being sloppy?
No. I mean, I think he's hilariously unprepared all the time, and we've talked about that on this show. Like when he had Ryan Holiday, he's a stoic philosopher. He had him on his show. He just kept asking him the same stupid fucking question, and I'm like, did you not read before this guy came on? So you can say sloppy, but like if sloppy's his MO and he continually gets it wrong, why are people still fucking listening to this asshole?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Joe Rogan has a I don't know how far we were into the pandemic when he was hired over at Spotify, but everything changed. I stopped watching the show, not for any particular reason. I just felt like the show kind of changed. I don't know if he would have been you wouldn't see 43 million results for apologies from Joe Rogan before he went to Spotify. So he is, I think, becoming like, I mean, he's apologized before, but I'm talking about the extent in which he apologizes now.
Has been COVID related. Yeah.
Right. I'm actually more, the thing that pissed me off more about that, because people do make mistakes. He's made a lot of them. I don't think they're intentional mistakes, but whatever. I didn't like that he took the segment out. And I can't figure out if he took the segment out because he just thought it was embarrassing or because the Spotify executives were like, it's dangerous to keep it in. Do we know what that answer is?
I think we're running into a situation now where Spotify is, because I'll tell you where he started to change.
I don't know what you're going to say, and I'm already disagreeing with you, but go ahead.
Rogan was in Los Angeles and was surrounded by liberals and thought his success was based on that group, right? Like he was impacted by his surroundings. Moves to Texas, he's far more right-wing sounding because he always has been a fairly liberal guy. That shift, the Spotify shift, also is around the same time that he moved the operation from Los Angeles to Austin, just outside of Austin. So I think that maybe he has a different philosophy because he's hanging around with different types of people. And I think also, and this is interesting because if you listen to the people that he has on his show that are close to him, if you listen to them talk about Rogan before, like about him without him around, it's interesting to hear them say that none of this surprises them. So I think he just got a little more comfortable sharing this side of himself when he realized that, oh yeah, there are people like this that think this way, and I'm now living with them all.
Isn't he just super serving his demo though? Like,
yeah.
When you really think about it, like in terms of radio, and let me just kind of walk. Well, I think he has to, and I think anybody
he has to now because of Spotify.
Exactly. I think he's got it. He's big time ticket. He's accountable to this company. He's one of the major drivers of it. And his base, what I'm to understand, his base of 11 million subscribers, 12 million subscribers, something like that. All MMA, all wellness, like fuck around with kratom, do a bunch of drugs, shoot some guns, tell the world to fuck off, eat a bunch of raw liver, all the shit, all the experimental shit. So I find it interesting that he's calling something that comes from, the medical institutions around the world experimental, which it's not. It's already approved. It's fucking fine. 13 billion shots have been given. There are no vaccine injuries to speak of, and any fucking idiot that says there is has yet to prove it, has yet to show me. I've seen some really unfortunate situations from pre-existing stuff, but I have yet to see a vaccine injury, and there have never been any died suddenly deaths. It's a joke. And he's on that team. And so are his base. So if he leaves that, and if he decides that he wants to be accountable at some point, that's why apologies work for him, right? He can go out and freewheel and be irresponsible, be an asshole, fucking go for 12 minutes on a fake tweet like it's real to use it to sewer people who disagree with him. That's the cheapest form of what he's doing. And it is not just dangerous, it's what completely complicit, lazy, sloppy cocks do in this business. But he's the biggest. He's the biggest because he's one of those fire starters, and there are people out there who agree with him because they're equally as dumb. Joe Rogan appears to be bright, has bright people on his show, is hilariously unprepared to do that show, and when he does it, he fucks it up, has to delete stuff, and has to pretend that he's sorry. That's what the fuck is that? Like, what the fuck is that? It's LARPing. He's LARPing for his audience so he can make money. He's not accountable to anybody. Hasn't been for years.
Is to Spotify now, and I think the conversation has changed. I think sorry, James, I was going to let you jump in here, but no, I want to hop in one with this. The power dynamic for Joe Rogan has shifted. He was always in control of his own destiny, right? Because everything that he created on his own, based on just this idea, this concept, and he kind of ripped it off from a couple of people, right? And he's kind of known as the podcast guy, but he sort of morphed a couple of people's different. Tom Green is one of them. He morphed this thing, and it sort of developed into what it is today. And it has the biggest following in the podcast platform on the planet. That comes with, and I would suggest it comes with a certain amount of responsibility, whether he wants to admit it or not, but it does. So that responsibility is what's triggering you. You're thinking he neglects that responsibility when he puts false information or has sloppy content on there. But there is a power dynamic now in this equation, in that he's being paid $100 million a year, some suggesting even more, from Spotify to do that show. So now he has people he answers to, whether he fucking says it or not. And I know it, he's full of shit. He still walks into that room and he still has control over his own destiny. And they don't want to lose him because they're getting millions and millions of downloads every month because of this guy. Well, every 6, 7, 8 months, it's huge.
Yeah.
But Spotify has been sitting him down and going, what the fuck? And that's why things like 10, 12-minute episodes, that's why warnings are showing up. He's losing some of these battles now because that power dynamic has shifted. And I think there's a case to be made for this based on how angry he is now, which is something new. It's something that I've noticed over the last couple of years.
And angry people reach for bullshit, anything they can to justify their anger.
He's more agitated. He's quicker to anger now. He will, like, you should hear him talk about CNN. He's been hauled out a couple of times by different organizations, and he's pissed off about it. And I think all that does is, when you've got a guy like that with an ego, and clearly he has an ego, is you dig in.
Yeah,
and
there's all these things that were happening simultaneously too at the time. The Spotify thing, pandemic. Also, before he went to Spotify and before the pandemic, Lachlan, you'll probably agree with this, I think. For those of us who did watch him on a fairly regular basis, I didn't see him as a right-winger. I actually saw him as a refreshing, hard-to-pin-down personality. And that's what kind of made me want to watch him. But I think the same thing that happened to that journalist, Tim Cook, who cut his teeth during the Occupy Wall Street protest as a liberal journalist, took a look at his analytics and was like, holy shit, do I ever have a big contingent of MAGA fucktards that are watching me? And I don't know if we're allowed to say that F word or not, but I said it.
I don't care.
Yeah, okay. And I think that they made a business choice. Tim Cook for sure made a business choice. He saw his analytics and was like, Wow. Every
You're
time I
talking about Tim
criticize
Pool,
the
not
left,
Tim Cook. Tim Cook is the Apple CEO. Tim Pool.
I'm so sorry. Who was it again? Tim
Pool. Tim Pool.
Tim Pool. My bad.
Yeah, just a little cock knocker that wears a fucking toque because he's balding. Just a douche.
and his horrible Radiohead-ish music. Oh my god.
Wow.
I'll play that on Casual Fridays.
No,
so
but
that,
you're proud of that. Don't worry about it.
I cover my head because I don't want everyone to lose their vision from the glare. Sorry, James. Keep going.
No, that's okay. Yeah. But I was going to say just that, like Tim Pool, Joe Rogan. There's probably, I think, the British guy there, Russell Brand. These guys see their analytics, and all of a sudden they start realizing that anytime they criticize the left, they gain thousands of more followers, and their analytics are showing that their traffic increases. So they've at first they decided that they were going to just keep criticizing the left and just sort of hit the right with kid gloves, and then they just stopped criticizing the right. Period. They just stopped. And I think it's a business decision. I think that their analytics and their web traffic proves to them that if they stay criticizing the left, their traffic will either maintain or increase.
Bingo.
You know what? I will say this too. I think this needs to be added into the equation. And again, not that I feel the need to explain Joe Rogan. And I'm very much motivated now by guests. And a lot of it has to do with my lack of time and the fact that I've found some other podcasts that I find very interesting. I don't listen to any podcasts now daily. I listen to the occasional thing every once in a while, right? My drive time is shortened. And if I hear about a good guest, I will. The other thing about Rogan that I think we're not necessarily bringing up is he has always been a skeptic, right? And you can run into situations where you're going to trigger one side or the other with that type of personality. And the reason why I'm familiar with that personality is because I'm a skeptic, and I got to catch myself every once in a while. I'll go down rabbit holes. But I also work on a podcast in the afternoon with a couple of skeptics as well. Yes. Right? Where your immediate instinct when something happens or information is presented to you to go,
let's dig in.
There's some bullshit here. Like, and if it involves the medical community down in the States, it's even worse than it is in Canada. There is zero trust for the medical institutions down there because it is a money grab. Yeah. And they're very different. They're structured very differently in the United States. Like the prisons are a for-profit organization. Like there's a lot of things down there that have completely that change how you perceive things as just a normal everyday citizen. And I think Rogan, and this isn't me giving him credit, I think Rogan is one of those guys that's reached a certain point in his life stature where he's able to put a bubble around himself and he doesn't have to worry about healthcare and all that. But I think he has always been a skeptic at heart. And if somebody says to him, if he goes to a doctor and says, you got this, take this pill, he's going to go, there's a fucking root from Africa I can chew on. I'm going to try that first.
Okay.
Right? Like, honestly, that guy.
I agree with you. I agree. I'm skeptical. You're skeptical. I know James is we're skeptical people, but what do we do when we're skeptical? Okay, let's
seek out professionals. Down. Yeah.
Yesterday, they made an announcement in Ontario. They're going to privatize a good portion of healthcare. So going with the American model, destroying universal healthcare in this beautiful province of ours, destroying it, like they're doing in Alberta, like they have in the United States, destroying it. I haven't said a word about it. I'm watching people rage, watching people get angry, talking to different people. But I put a call into Dr. Mario Elia. I said, before I go off like a lunatic, can you explain this to me properly? He goes, be happy to. Thank you for asking that question, he said. I'm like, no problem. When I'm skeptical, what I do is I go to professionals and I counsel 2 or 3 of them and I say, tell me more. And then I digest that information and then I put it out there for other people to kind of judge whether or not they're telling the truth. Right? Whether or not you agree with me doesn't matter. What matters is that we arm you with that information. That is the responsibility behind this job, in my opinion. To Joe Rogan, it is not. His job is to feed that skeptical machine because he really is a skeptic leader in that country, in the world, right? So that makes all kinds of sense to me. But ignoring your responsibility to fellow citizens when you do that, that's a problem. That's what nobody seems to want to talk about either. Like nobody wants to talk about that portion of it. And to that point, Joe doesn't just act skeptical. What he does is he brings people on to discount actual professionals like Brett Weinstein. This was the tail end of their conversation. Listen very carefully to how he says he's right and all the other academics are losers. Hang on.
This problem's already bad enough. Most academics are fakers. They don't know that, right? They trained in something, they wrote a dissertation, they think they're experts, but you can see when something unexpected happens, like the pandemic, you get just broad scale failure across entire disciplines where nobody seems to get it right?
Subscribe to my channel.
Subscribe to my channel. That was.
I just want to meet the voiceover girl.
A Russian disinformation channel, which I got that from. It was great. Did you hear what he said?
Yeah, he was describing himself.
Yeah, he's like fakers. They're all fakers. Yeah. And when COVID comes around, that's when they get taken out as fakers. Well, guess what? COVID came around. No one knew what the fuck was going on because it was brand new, and so we freaked out. And everybody went
and we made a bunch of mistakes.
And we made a bunch of mistakes.
And
but that guy hasn't moved off the fact that it's a conspiracy. But they've taken that and gone, oh, it's conspiracy. You're right. It's all fuel for these losers. And losers lose. It's what they do. Joe Rogan and Brett Weinstein lost yesterday. They'll continue to lose. This isn't going to end well for any of those guys. We're in the find out portion. If you were on Twitter, you'd go, oh, the fucking losers are winning. No, not at all. They make it look like they are. They are lying. They are still losing, and they are going to die before you and me. So just take that, put it in your hip city pocket, and fucking be happy about it. That they're going to get the sickest, and they're going to die first. Maybe not Joe, because he's got access to a whole bunch of weirdness because he's loaded. But the people he's telling not to get vaccinated, and the fix is in, and George Soros is Batman, and all the other bullshit, those people will die. And you know what? That makes me happy. So when someone says, and I mean that, like when Joe's like, I don't want anything bad to happen. Fuck that. Dude, you want to roll the dice with COVID and you want to follow Joe Rogan down that health fucking walk? Go ahead. But you get to experience all the same fucking consequences that everybody else who isn't taking care of themselves gets to experience. And you know what? I'm not only okay with it, I welcome it because that's their desired result. So there you go.
I think when you're dealing with health and your own health, I think it is important to be skeptical, and I think it is important to make sure you explore your options because I think, and this is me.
They're skeptical, and then they're skeptical and taking that skepticism and telling everybody else that everybody's wrong and you're right. The problem is we're
mixing COVID into this, right? And then the vaccine hesitancy, and then there's religion, and then and politicians were standing in front of stumps telling us what to do, and that was a fucking mistake. And there's so many elements of this that make the Joe Rogan conversation difficult. I'm not defending the guy when he fucks up. I don't know whether or not it's the right thing for him to apologize. I don't know why he comes on. I don't think it's a money thing. I don't think somebody shows up at the end of every week and goes, here's your ivermectin check. Thank you, big guy. Have a good week.
It's probably hubris. Look at the money that he makes.
A lot of it. Yeah.
You know, like he makes 100 million a year is more than what I think it is. I think he had a 2-year deal for 100 million, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that. And you know, if you're a skeptic and you're confident about what you're talking about, you're probably going to sound like you're grifting, but maybe you're just ignorant, you know. And it sounds like what happens to Joe Rogan is that he's getting sloppy, he's getting lazy, he's not fact checking as much as he should. He's hanging around with Weinstein there. Don't forget his brother is Peter Thiel's business partner. You know, like these are not like
whose brother? Rogan's brother?
No, Weinstein. Eric Weinstein's brother is Brett Weinstein. Is that Brett Weinstein or Eric?
That's Brett.
That's Brett. So Eric Weinstein is Peter Thiel's business partner. Really brilliant guy. He was the guy that said that he met with Epstein, with Jeffrey Epstein, before he died, and walked away from the meeting knowing that there was something criminal about him. Like he made it seem like that. But you know, like these are. the people that Joe Rogan hangs out with are also filthy rich people that don't really have anything to lose by being wrong.
You're right.
Like when you say like Joe Rogan's losing, I don't know if anyone really feels that way because of how rich he is, and this will just go away, and he probably won't lose any subscribers, and he might even gain a few depending on how hard the left hit him, because that's the way it works now.
Yeah, because right now is we're picking sides, and those sides are becoming more and more inflamed, and then they gravitate to one thing or the other, right? The other thing too, like, and I don't know if you noticed this, James, you listened to Rogan for a long time as well. I picked up on this, and it was part of the reason why I started to lose a little bit of interest in him, is because he's lost some humility. And you can tell by his interaction with his friends, and his friends are the ones that he keeps having back on a regular basis. And now you can feel there's a different energy in that room. And I'm sensitive to it because I do what I do, and I can listen to a show and I can tell you in 10 seconds if the people sitting in that room are friends or not, or if they're just putting in the time because there's a check at the end of every 2 weeks. And I felt this in the last couple of years with his growing money and power and influence, because it's an influential show. You can be mad at him if you want. You can disagree with him, but somebody goes on there and promotes a book, that book is going to climb up the bestseller chart immediately. And it works in all aspects of the business. He's the new late night TV, right?
He's Bropra, right?
If you just came up with that, that's fucking brilliant, James. So here's the thing with him, though. I can feel it with his friends. They treat him differently.
Yeah. Joey Diaz, when he first moved to Spotify, said on his podcast that that they're going to, I can't remember how he worded it, but basically Joey Diaz was like, they're going to get him. They're going to get him now, and he's going to, he's going to have to toe the line or he's going to get destroyed. And I don't think Joey Diaz was right about either of those things, because I don't think he's towing the line, and he's certainly not destroyed yet. I would have hazarded a guess that Spotify doesn't renew his contract, though. I mean, I'm not very good at gambling, so you don't have to take what I'm saying, as biblical. But is it worth the hassle for Spotify? I don't know.
It will never be about whether it's worth the hassle. We've talked about this before. Anybody that says they got fired for something that they said on the radio or on TV or anything,
money.
It's never that. It's always about the impact it had on the bottom line. And
I think that's what I meant, though. Do you remember it was like a trendy thing? Like, I'm leaving Spotify. I'm taking my music off Spotify. Can you name one of those artists right now? Because
Neil Young,
Joni Mitchell.
Okay, one,
two,
and everyone under 30 is like, who? And who uses Spotify? Everyone under 30, right? So it's like finding out that the Sunday Comics canceled Ziggy.
Yeah,
you're like, what?
Oh, it's a shame. No Ziggy. No more Ziggy. What about Calvin and Hobbes? Yeah, same thing. No, it's fascinating, and I would agree with you.
It's
I just think the clock is running on these. Yeah, it is. I mean, do you have a responsibility to tell the truth and get it right and prepare when you know you've got 12 million people hanging on your every word, and you're not a medical professional? You're the guy from news radio in Fear Factor. I mean, it doesn't get any dumber than that to me. I think
that's part of the charm, though, right? Because he was that guy, right? And yeah. I think that's why his success...
But hold it, that works only for a certain period of time. Like Elon Musk is a great example of that, right? He's every man's rich guy buster. Everybody supported him when he was on the outside looking in. That's our guy. He's going to go to the moon. He's now the richest guy in the world. There's no stopping him. He just became the first guy to lose $220 billion. First person.
Bit of a different story, though. Elon also likes it when people take a dump on his chest.
Yeah, he really does.
It's different.
Yeah. Speaking of schneizers, last thing I wanted to play for you guys before we go. James, you would know. I'm not a cocaine guy, but did Donald Trump Jr. do all the cocaine?
Yeah. We have a crisis. There's a human trafficking crisis. There's a drug trafficking crisis. There's a child trafficking crisis. There's a sex trafficking.
Okay, listen.
Do you see the spot on the our right on the right side of his nostril. Do you see that little crevice there?
Yeah.
Go back to me for a second.
Yeah.
That's from doing this. That's getting the leftover cocaine that's still in there. See how it's redder on that one side than the other side? He's a right nostril snorter. And you can tell, seriously, I'm not kidding. And you can tell that he has to open up his septum to get the leftover cocaine when he sniffs. You wanted my expert opinion. I'm giving it to you.
Well, no, you're not wrong. Let's look at that little thing and continue to watch a guy have a coke rant.
Pretending like nothing's going on. It's the border. Now, kind of. He visits El Paso. Not necessarily like the epicenter of the disaster, sort of like borders are Kamala Harris. Like, let's go somewhere.
You know, again, look at
good freeze frame. That's the
so he's got the red around his nose and the nostrils from hoovering the rest of the coke in there. But slidey lips is a coke tell too, isn't it? Other than the manic behavior and the fact his eyes are glossed over and he's actually squinting in the middle of the day underneath the porch, those are good tells. But the slidey mouth, like the crooked mouth, that's usually a coke tell, is it not?
Well, yeah, because you're clenching, right? And also his lips look a little pasty and cracked too, which is another tell.
Yeah, he's clearly dehydrated.
Plus, look at all of the cocaine stuck in his chin beard, right?
Hundreds of miles away from the worst of it, and won't see the carnage. They won't see the disaster. They just move all the illegal immigrants off the streets right before he arrives. And I'm sure within hours of him being gone, they'll open that back up. See it. Hundreds of thousands of new people coming in. Let's just pretend everything is fake with the Democrats. Everything is fake with this administration. And everything is fake with those who enable these kinds of lies to continue. Namely.
Yeah. You're testing positive for cocaine, son.
He's got a lot of coke in his system. Eh?
It was a white Christmas.
And
that's
also his head is like this because he's controlling the drip, right? He needs the drip to go that way and not that way, right? So, if you ever see me like this on a podcast, I'm so glad you've done
tons of coke. Yeah.
If you ever see me like this on a podcast, you know I fell off the wagon. Like
chewing on the side of your face.
That's right.
Yeah, I got to tell you though, if I had money and I didn't get married when I was 21. I would probably have that very similar emancipated look.
Center of the disaster.
That one?
I would have been a full-blown drug addict. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I'm still worried that I'm going to become successful because of that exact reason, Lachlan.
I would have loved that drug. And yeah.
I would have loved that drug.
I would have been on
it looks like it's so much fun.
Been on a horse
for
years.
Let's go. Let's go.
It is pretty dope.
Yeah, it is. It's fucking quite the look, isn't it? Thanks for doing this, boys. It's Lachlan Cross from 957 Cruise FM in Edmonton. Listen to him every single weekday morning at 957cruisefm.ca. The best rock and roll morning show in the country. Trust me, because I tried to listen to some radio in Toronto this week. No bueno.
Follow me on Twitter. I send out a link to the show every morning. You can listen live from anywhere in the country. We have more listeners in Ontario now for some strange reason.
You're welcome. At Lachlan Cross on Twitter is where you can find him. And that, my friends, is my very dear friend, James DeFiore, host of Blackballed the Podcast, one of the biggest in the network, one of the fastest growing news/interview podcasts in the world, as a matter of fact, and doing just an incredible job. Like the last interview you did with the lady who's a lawyer, and she's like,
she's my buddy. Can I say,
once, and she's like, fuck it, I'm out.
I didn't want to say it on the podcast with her because, but we met June 1st, 2000 in the hotel room of the DJ that I brought in, DJ Scott Stubbs. I was high as a fucking kite on coke and E and drugs and whatever. And I walked up to her and sat down on the bed, and she was sitting on a bed in front of me. And I was like, did you know my hands are small enough to get inside your vagina and actually tug at your cervix? Have you ever experienced that before? And instead of knocking me out, she laughed her ass off, and we've been friends ever since. So
James has an interesting way of making
friends. That is a very interesting
Yeah.
pickup move, James.
Yeah,
it was a good icebreaker. And by the way, tonight I have Max Fawcett. Tomorrow I have an ex-cult member, Beth Seed. Thursday I have Karima. And then Friday is Casual Friday. And Ryan Lindley will be back. We had Spenny last week and Paul Atkinson, so this should be fun.
Yeah, you're doing a great job, dude. It's a great podcast. You got to watch it. Blackballed. Go and subscribe anywhere you can find podcasts and his YouTube channel. Yeah.
It was a pleasure today.
Yes, I also had a good time, Lachlan. Thank you.
I enjoyed my time with you.
Yes, I as well. And you're right. You have, as I said to you in a message, you anytime you want to barge in on Casual Friday, you have an invite in perpetuity. Both of you do. So
he is 7 beers in at 7:00 Eastern time on Friday.
Doesn't make it a bad idea to jump on James's podcast though.
That's perfect. Nice. Spenny was like, he had rosacea and everything.
Did he really? And he was like,
he was drinking scotch. It was hilarious. It was good.
All right, guys.
See you, boys. Great to see you. James D. Fiore, Blackball, the podcast. Go sub wherever you get your fine podcast. Great to see you, brother. Thanks for doing
buddy.
this.
Good to see you.
Always good to have you. There you go. James D. Fiore, Blackball, the podcast. Sub and download anywhere you get your fine podcast. Rate and subscribe, too. That'd be great. Or not. But it's nice when you do. It's just a nice thing to do. Oh, I like that. There you go. You rate and subscribe. Super simple. Really easy. Oh, well, that's it for us. Have a great day, everybody. Want to thank our friends and partners that make this possible, including kivlaw.ca, top criminal defense attorneys in Southern Ontario, St. Catharines to be exact. Get popped for impaired, Securities Act offenses, real estate issues, civil claims, any offenses at all, civil litigation. This is your crew. Guaranteed. Go to kivlaw.ca if you're looking for a great criminal defense attorney, defense lawyers that actually care about getting your life back. And you can get help 24/7 from my friend Rob Kivlikin if you just email him, Robert at kivlaw.ca. Listen, you don't want to deal with legal issues. You don't want to let these things kind of harangue and prolong and kind of fester. You want to deal with it. That guy's your best bet, as are his group of defense attorneys at kivlaw.ca. Go to kivlaw.ca today. Email Robert if you're up against it, Robert at kivlaw.ca. Southern Ontario's best defense attorneys. Hey, how about Cantork, huh? We have this guy on, Flavio Volpe, who built Canada's very first EV. It's fucking unbelievable. Crazy story. We had it on today. And I'm going to introduce these two. My boy Colin at Cantork, Canada's assembly tool experts. They make rugged, hardworking torque wrenches for jobs like railroads. How about nuclear facilities? How about mining applications, heavy equipment applications? If you can't find it, they make fasteners and looseners that nobody else in the world makes, and they make them in Canada. So if you're a Canadian company, you're in need, give my friend Colin a call. Just give him a little ring, or even hit him up at cantork.com. They take care of you. I'm going to introduce him to Flavio, too. See if we can't get some Canadian know-how working together. That'd be nice. But thanks to our friends at Cantork, go to cantork.com for more information. And, of course, Ed's Fine Imports and his Gitch. We wear them all the time. You can, too. Go to Ed's Fine Imports today. Gitch3, that is your promo code. Promo code Gitch3. Gitch, the #1 Canadian underpant boxer briefs, pouch in the front in the world. You got to check these things out. Made for Canadians, all Canadian weared, Canadian made, Canadian engineered, all that stuff. I love things that happen in this country. Big supporter of this place. You should be too. So when someone says to you, this country's broken, don't believe them. It's bullshit. It's not broken. We have a few people in this country who are seriously broken. Those are the ones that are telling you it's broken. It ain't. Best country in the world. You know it. I know it. Da-da-da-da-da. Like my boy Ed. Ed's Fine Imports. Go there today. Clothing for men and boys. Gitch3 is your promo code. You can send you a free pair when you order 3 or more. Do it today. Shop in Canada, friends. That's it for us. Thank you for being part of the show. Thanks to Flavio Volpe from APMA for joining us today. Thanks to James from Blackball for joining us today. Thanks to Joe Rogan for being a human piece of shit. Same with Brett Weinstein. Makes our job a lot easier. Have a great day. See you tomorrow around 3 o'clock. Bye.